Greetings, everyone. I'm Eddie Brown, the director of the Greater Hartford Youth Leadership Academy at Hartford Communities That Care, and welcome to our Raising Youth Voices podcast. This episode will be sharing our perspective on session 2 of the Excelerator, Building Justice and Equity in Child Welfare Agencies. We have considerable interest in this issue. Earlier this year, our youth leaders formed a child injuries and fatality prevention work group and interviewed state agency officials and local physicians. We learned about the Family First Preventive Safety Act and the goal of having a child welfare movement that is more preventive and proactive rather than reactionary. We also have heard many times about the importance of extending trauma treatment holistically to workforce responders who experience secondary trauma just by being in service to victims of violence. So we're delighted today to extend our learning as a result of the very thoughtful presenters this past Thursday, November 5th, who are Sharonda Silvanov, Allison Del Percio, and Sixto Cancel. Today, I'm honored to be again back with our youth leaders, Nezra Adams, Jaron Langford, and our college and youth ambassador, Deidre Borns. Each of them was online Thursday, and they've given some deep thought through their experiences that the three speakers shared on the topic of building justice and equity in child welfare agencies. In the north end of Hartford, our executive director, Mr. Andrew Woods, is a UConn-trained MSW, and he's worked in our community since the 90s. He's often said that the efforts to prevent violence, retaliation, and recidivism here would be much more effective if only a young person at risk simply had affordable housing, a vehicle, a decent job to help put food on the table for his family. This is exactly what Sharonda, Allison, and Sixto touched upon when they called for the flexible funding to help keep families together when in crisis. Sharonda also stressed that child welfare doesn't address poverty, and she also warned that a racist system wreaks havoc, even causes irreparable harm to children instead of facing and treating the problems at hand. She really got everyone's attention with her story of Cynthia, a woman who lost her 3 kids to foster care, only to have the system make their problems worse, and ultimately make it impossible for them to be returned to her. She also left us with the haunting question where I'm going to start today. What if we got to a place where the system was anti-racist and did not add more trauma on top of the trauma that people already face? So we're going to start there today, but of course, first, I want to check in with our 3 youth, Nezra, Jaron, Deidre, just see how you guys' week been since the last time we met. Just quick check-ins will go around at this time.
Okay, I guess I'll go first. So my week's been okay. It's just school again. It's nothing else to do. So I got an A plus, and 100% on my English assessment, and I'm not failing math anymore. So that's good.
Congratulations.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
That's great. Okay, so I guess I'm gonna go next. I recently got my certification for the trauma training that I did for NCTSN. I forgot what that acronym stood for, not gonna lie. But so now I'm certified in that, so like that is, very great for me. And then, I had work and stuff, working with kids, my strong suit. So yeah.
Excellent. Nezra.
My week has gone good. I'm the first on the dean's list at my school, and I have high honors, so everything's going good for me right now.
Congratulations. All the stellar youth I'm honored. Keep up the good work, guys. That's awesome. All right, so moving on to our first question, let's get into this conversation. What if we got to a place where the system was anti-racist and did not add more trauma on top of the trauma that people are already facing today?
First off, that's a dream. Honestly, that is a dream. But I feel like if it was anti-racist and we didn't have so many problems, it would be a lot easier to locate where the trauma is originally coming from. So if we found out how to have better affording housing and better education, then we can realize how we can stop people from adding on to that piece where they already probably have something going on, like going through stages of grief from a loss of somebody, like, many other mental health issues. So yeah, I feel like if it was we would be able to hit it at its root and then find a solution that way.
I agree with Deidre, but I also feel like if the system was anti-racist, a lot of I'm not going to say trauma, but a lot of the anger that we feel internally would be lifted, because a lot of it's caused by us feeling like the system is currently always putting us down and is always against us. So if it wasn't always against us, then we would feel like it'd be like a weight lifted off of our shoulders, because we're not fighting against the whole world. And so I think not only will we be able to find the root causes of our trauma, but we'd also feel a lot less angry as a race, to put it that way.
Right, I also agree with that. But like both of them said, it's really hard to actually try to vision that because we're so far behind and everything. But yeah.
Yeah, that's true. It's a lot. There's so much that goes on, especially with racism in general and facing these inequalities. So, just to think about that is something that, of course, we can dream of, but will it ever happen? We're hopeful, but hey, it's just the world that we live in. But, trauma is important to touch on. And again, Deidre, don't take that certificate lightly, as you are, specializing and certifying in trauma care. So that's so important to, have those practices and understanding the children that you work with. Moving on to the discussion, again, we had great points from Sharonda Savalanoff, Allison DePercio, Sixto Cancel, who were great speakers at this past Thursday's Accelerator session on building justice and equity in child welfare agencies. My first question I want to direct towards Jiren, and as well as others can, add on as well. So taking Allison's suggestion, how would you make the point from your own experience, Jiren, that family separation is cruel, whether it happens in a spectacularly bad policy at the Texas border or quietly in the child care system?
Well, my own personal experiences lie within the child welfare system, and it both negatively impacts the child and the family who the child is being taken from, especially when the child is that they understand that they're being taken, but they can't understand why they're being taken. And it's so scary because it's the unknown, especially for somebody so young. And because of this trauma, the child can develop permanent mental health implications such as anger issues or bipolar depression. And so in my own personal experience, I had fostered my little cousin. He was 7 or 8. I don't remember. He was 7 or 8. We fostered him for 3 to 4 months, maybe longer. Definitely wasn't a year. And I noticed he was crying a lot, and I don't know how much 7-year-olds cry, but it was a lot more than I would suspect a 7-year-old to cry. And especially after like his supervised visits, it was really bad. And so I believe that if he was away from his home longer, then he would most definitely suffer permanent mental health implications. And the reality is that a lot of children are away from their homes for years, or even permanently, decades. And so people aren't aware that removing the child from the home causes that child so much trauma. And even then, it's like somebody had mentioned in the chat during that, how they call people who take care of the child foster parents. And that becomes even more confusing within the child's head, because it feels like they're losing their actual parents because now they have these foster parents. And so I agreed with, I don't remember who it was, but somebody in the chat said we should call them foster caregivers. And that's even something as simple as that could aid, because then the child isn't as confused as to what's going on. And the child would know that they're not actually losing their parents, unless it really comes down to that.
Yeah, you raise an interesting point with that, with the name specifically, specifying things. I know in the school system, they say that they really don't agree with calling behavior technicians. It's like who are these children? Are they machines? Are they, that we have to technically, repair their behavior or challenges? So it's like different names. So as far as a foster parent, I think foster caregiver is better. So it's all about the names and how we're, representing, these children are not objects, they're people, and they have feelings.
So to add on to Jaren's question, from my experiences with foster care with like family and friends, I've only seen it negatively. I've never seen it impact anybody in a good way. My cousin, she's in the foster care system, which luckily she's doing fine. She just got her own house, so that's good, but she's been in and out for as long as I could remember. So it's just like continuously going from foster care to foster house, and then back to mom, then taken away again. And it's just like, when does it stop? When does the cycle stop? If you know that the parent isn't mentally capable to keep a child, then why send them back? So it's just like that whole thing. But then also moving them from house to house to house to house, where they don't have a connection with anybody, is even worse, because they're going to continuously feel like, okay, I have no need to make a connection because of the simple fact that I'm going to be moved 2 months later. So it's just like, I feel like it's a good system, it's a good thought, but they need to put that thought and put it down and add some ideas to it.
I agree. Okay, I agree with what you said. A child really needs something to like latch on, not necessarily latch onto, but have as a grounding mechanism, because children have the wildest imaginations. So if they're constantly jumping between homes every 2 months, then they don't know what to think. And because of these wild imaginations, they can go to such negative places unless they have something that they can rely on, even if that something's their caseworker. As long as if you could build a relationship with one person and it's a consistent relationship, then you're better off than somebody who doesn't have those relationships and is constantly jumping around without those relationships.
That's important.
Right. And what Jaren was saying is like a lot of these kids, they don't have the stability, and them not being stable and not having that stability is messing them up mentally. And there's actually been research that if it's not, when you're being pulled out of your home, yeah, it's traumatizing. And if it's not messing you up mentally, it can mess you up physically. There's actually research that states that people with high levels of trauma are at a greater risk of getting heart disease and cancer and stuff like that.
Wow, that's deep. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, and it required the mentorship again with all of this bouncing around. Even like foster care students alone, just being in different workers and getting placed with workers. When they build that relationship, they get upset because the fact that they have to meet somebody new. So just imagine bouncing from home to home with their whole caregiver. It's just like, it's traumatizing. You know what I'm saying? I'm meeting all these new people. Who is this? It draws different trust issues and stuff like that. So it's very, very important. So a separation is very cruel, just the harm on them. And of course, talking about the physical aspects of it as well. Thanks for bringing that up, because again, it can really take a toll on you physically. And I know, Deirdre, we talked about this a while back in regards to mentors and programs and a little idea that we had, but we'll talk about that more offline. But it's just, I feel like it's just important for even the caseworkers to take it, not just saying that I'm assigned to this client, but really taking that client or student, youth, whoever it is, that child on as a mentee, and really helping them promote those life skills and different things like that to really mold them. Even though they're in and out of these homes, just let them know that they still have someone that cares regardless.
So one last point with that.
Sure.
Because I feel I need to say it, but like learning to to be able to like heal yourself, you know? So like learning about history that you've never known about, or you know, doing breathing techniques. Try to start doing yoga, eating differently, like seeing where what's good to eat, what's not good to eat, like taking some things off of your time where you feel like you are by yourself, because you're not always by yourself, because there is energies and everything around. I can talk about it all day, but making sure that you know yourself enough, which is really hard, especially for kids in foster care. But these social workers and stuff need to teach the kids that it's okay to make mistakes, it's okay to fail, it's okay to learn from past mistakes, and learn that it's all right to know yourself and knowing your mental capacity. So that's what I had to say. That's what I had.
No, that's very important. I feel like the age, it shouldn't be a limit, or it shouldn't be a certain age where they can start. Obviously, maybe an infant might not be knowledgeable, but as long as they're at that level where they can understand and be taught, I think it should start as young as they can, to start that self-care or whatever they can teach them in a way to really take care of themselves, and knowing that they'll be in these type of positions.
Yeah,
So definitely thank you for sharing. Go ahead,
I
Jim.
was just about to bring up age-wise. People who are like 7, 8, 9, they are old enough to start learning these things, but they aren't old enough to understand. And so yeah, I think that's why I think it's so good to instill that knowledge into children while they're young, because when they're older they can use these strategies that they learned, that have been implemented into their brains, to help them heal when they actually understand how to heal.
Definitely.
Even with the social workers and the people who are actually like who have this position and who are supposed to be mentoring to the kids, I feel like they also have to have a sense of who they are and have to have a sense of healing. Because Deja's always telling me every day, she's always telling me that I can't heal somebody until I found some type of healing. I'm not able. It's like, how am I gonna heal somebody if I'm not even healed myself? So we have to make sure that these social workers at least have some type of idea of who they are, making sure that the job that they're in is actually a job that they want to be doing. Therefore, they can teach these other kids how to heal and start to develop these positive things within a child.
Enough said right there. You said it all. There you go. Thank you, Nazar. Moving on, and as we're speaking of, I'm hearing what Sistos advised against invading people's privacy without purpose and a result. How will you do interviews and research in the future?
Okay, I would say to make sure that the interviews actually have purpose. Like Sisto said, when getting data and interviews, when getting data and interviews from people that have hard times, we need to honor that they're still human. Maya Angelou once said, I can be changed by what happens to me, but I refuse to let it reduce me. So by being more aware and sensitive about what you ask, and that could really help. Like if you're not looking for a solution to the problem, don't ask the question, because then it seems like you're ignoring them. And it's like, who are we as human beings to ignore someone else suffering? So yeah, another thing that we don't want to do is don't see them as less than. Don't see them, don't reduce them because of what they've been through. When asking questions, be more sensitive and make sure that when you ask them and when you get the answer, you're going to actually do something about it, but don't do it out of pity.
So we were actually having a conversation about this and how we can do that from the instead of invading people's privacy and pushing them. I know interviews are voluntary, but some of the things that people ask, it's like, why are you asking me this? But like at the same time, I feel like using interviews as research and put it into data points is a really good thing, because it's people's experiences. So you can't go wrong with anybody's experiences because it's what they live by every day. So interviewing John from, Simsbury is different from David in, in Hartford. So like there's many different things and many different experiences that you can get from an interview that you can't get from a statistic. Like, so I feel like when Ezra said was correct was that we shouldn't be like going off of pity. We should actually be using empathy. And that's what Sixto also said, that we turn on sympathy and then turn off empathy. And that turns people off, because it's like, I don't want you to feel bad for me. I'm sharing this because I want it to go out there, and people have knowledge about what we go through every single day. So like, and I do that too. I turn on my sympathy, like, oh my goodness, like, how can I help, like, but I need to really turn on my empathy, because at the same time they are giving me knowledge that I didn't know yesterday. So it's just like that whole thing of like knowing how to do a proper interview is good, and knowing that you have people skills as well.
Right. And then another thing that's also hard is some people find it hard to ask people for directions if they never been where they're going, if that makes sense. Like, it's like we can't ask people for help if they have never been where we're trying to go. I can't ask you for help if you're not trying to understand me, and if it's just out of pity, and if it's just out of sympathy.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because I'm really just stuck where you was at when you said don't see them as less than, because a lot of times we go in and we'll review a file, whatever we have to do, a case on whatever the kid that we're about to interview. And then we're going in and saying, oh, we got to look out for ADHD, we got to look out for trauma, we got to look out for at-risk, flight risk, whatever these cases may be. But then you can go do the interview and the kid is calm, and when you're really tapping in and really getting to know this child, you're seeing that this person is just, all he needed was someone that cared, all he needed was someone that he was able to relate to, all he needed was someone to just understand, or just to talk to, period, just to get it out. Nobody really wanted to listen, nobody really wanted to hear me. But but we're going and judging and taking all of these risks. It's no good. It's no good for the future.
For like the training piece, I don't know if you have. Did you have anything before I went?
No.
Okay, so like for my training and like realizing like the people that we are trying to build a connection to, notice that a lot of things that we find normal, they might not find normal. So like realizing that, like, when you're counseling somebody and they're up and their stress level is really high, and you're like, okay, like, calm down, it's all right, like that could be a trigger for somebody. So like realizing when you interview people that you're taking that time out to actually get to know the person, and you don't have to go into depth, like what happened to you when you were like 6 years old. Like, you don't have to do that, but just know what is comfortable for somebody and what's not comfortable. Like, we're so used to saying like when you're doing like a distress, close your eyes. Like, sometimes we got to do it voluntarily. Like, you can close your eyes if you want to. You don't have to do it. So like saying something like that in the interview makes the process a lot more calming, because if somebody wants to comply and say many different things that happened to them that was very traumatic, it would be a lot easier for the interviewer and be like, okay, I could jot that down, because they were willing to share it. So yeah, that's what.
Thank you. That's important. Thanks for sharing. And like I said, it's so important for you, as young as you are, to get that type of training, and just to imagine the more advanced training and skills that you're going to be developing even in the future. So to know that now, to help young people and peers around you in that field, as well as being a voice to older professionals that's been in this field for so long, it can really change their perspective. All right, moving on to our last question, and then we'll wrap this segment up. You all are aware of, a long list of social and economic inequalities related to systemic racism, such as income, home ownership, high school and college graduation rates, mass incarceration, even infant mortality and life expectancy. What did you guys learn from session 2 about systemic bias in the child welfare system?
Oh, I learned that a lot of LGBTQ kids make up the foster care system, which is like really crazy to me because like a lot of so-called beliefs are blocking the relationship between a kid and their parent, like and it's putting them in like a state where I've seen a lot of stories of kids like coming out and their parents are like um they're like, you can't stay in my house if you're going to be like that, or like as very religious people say, I'm going to pray for you, or something like that. Like it draws a disconnect for the kids. And Allison, she did the whole presentation about LGBTQ and the child welfare system, and she said understanding the multi-layered prejudice is important. Systems of oppression is important to know because it's a system of oppression. So basically understanding the multi-layered prejudice, like religion, belief, or so on and so forth. If you understand the different things that are affecting the kids and in the system, it would be a lot easier to break down the kid and making sure that it's easier for them to trust again, because that can be very hard for them to trust because of the simple fact that their parent didn't accept them. So what makes society want to accept me? So yeah, that's one thing. I'm not gonna go because I'm pretty sure that I'm not gonna continue because I'm pretty sure that somebody else wants to go. But
yeah, I was even when they do go into the foster system, it's not any better than when they left the home, because there's so many people who have so many different beliefs. And even if they were to go into a foster home, that home could be no better, if anything even worse, because they are part of the LGBTQ community. So yeah, the home could be worse. And even group homes, children are cruel, especially when they're in their teenage years. And so if they were to go in a group home and if they were to be themselves, which they should never not be themselves, they could get physically abused, not by the people running the group home, but by the children who are in the group home. And so I think just being LGBTQ in the system is so difficult because your parents don't accept you. There's so many foster homes that wouldn't accept you. And even in group homes, there's the children who are constantly putting you down. And so I think it's sad, really.
Yeah, and I also think that gentrification has a lot to do with it, like, because that can cause urban overcrowding and stuff like that, and that makes it harder for these Black parents to get jobs, or just parents. It makes it harder for parents to get jobs and actually support their child. And the system looks at a lot of materialistics, because there's a really big, what we said last time, there's a really big stigma on what makes you a good parent, what makes you a fit parent. And one thing is that if you don't have this certain materialistic in the home, then the system automatically thinks that you're a bad parent. So I think that gentrification has a big role, a big part of it. And another thing that somebody said, I can't remember who it was, but somebody said in the session, they said jail is for Black men and child welfare is for Black women. So when I heard that, it made me pause and it made me think, like, so is the unfair educational system, is that for the Black children? Is that the thing that they're trying to have us do? They're trying to lessen our knowledge and have us sit in this ignorance by not educating us and giving us an unfair educational system. Yeah.
So, would you like to support materialism? So saying that the parent doesn't have a certain thing or isn't able to find a job that interferes with them so being able to support their kid? Is it mentally or like physically, like in appearance? That's I was just wondering, like I was trying to figure out like what did you mean by that?
I was just saying that, okay, so when the social worker comes to view the house and stuff like that, if the house is missing something in particular, they automatically assume that the house is not a good home. They automatically assume that the parent is not fit for the child. So they look more towards materialistic, because the parent could be the perfect parent mentally. Like the parent could be very supportive, very welcoming, trying to lessen any negativity that the child is already getting from the outside world. Or because the refrigerator might not be full, the social worker will assume.
I was just asking because I was confused, honestly. I was like, huh? But I feel like Sharonda, she was talking a lot about poverty and stuff like that, and I actually I've been doing the whole research about poverty and how economics plays a big part in parenting. And I was actually going to work yesterday, and I had to take an Uber, and I was talking to my Uber driver, and I was like, he was talking about his kids and how much he loves his kids and stuff like that. And I was like, I work with kids and I have serious baby/toddler fever, but you know, I don't have enough money in my bank account to even help myself. So like, how am I gonna raise a kid? So he was like, it's really crazy because a lot of things in the stores, like baby formula and stuff, it's the same thing, but it's overpriced. So a lot of people are like, I can't afford to take care of a child, I can't do this, but it's the same thing from years before, like when he has like 7 kids. So like people are like, whoa. But at the same time, it's just like the things were affordable, but now it's overpriced to the point where they feel like they can't have any kids anymore. Like, you know, like he said it was really crazy that people don't feel like they can help another human life that they create because of the many systems in place to break us down, like overpriced food, not being able to afford housing, and like the child welfare system also does things in secret. Like I always say that every town, you're not safe in no town that you go in, because a lot of things can happen underneath your nose, and then you wouldn't know, but you would think that it's the best town ever because there's no spotlight on it. So like child welfare systems have no spotlight on them, so it's easier to sneak a little statistic, like, you know, like a kid like 36% of kids like say that child welfare is bad, they don't like foster care systems or whatever, but it's swept because they can do that because nobody really pays attention to the kids. Well, people don't pay attention to the kids in the foster system. Like they're the forgotten children. So it's just like, how are we going to fix that? So yeah, that's what I got from the whole thing.
Awesome. I mean, I could sit here all day and listen to your views. I know we're at a certain time, but this is amazing. And just really capturing each point from these 3 amazing speakers and really hearing your own perspectives on really how family separation is not the answer to child welfare. Overcoming poverty is an act of justice. And more so, of course, understanding the multi-layered prejudice when it comes to the intersectionality. And then lastly, you know, when gathering data and interviews from people in trouble, honor that person as capable and don't ask people to, you know, to share their trauma stories for no result, and always have a purpose and a result in mind. So, you know, these are important factors and things to look at. And then as we transition into next week, we'll be talking about the resilience and learnings from brain science. So really, as we're seeing how, you know, all these children what they're facing, in the system, but really getting in more of the psychological aspects of brain science and more in depth of how their brain is working. Is this coming from generational cycles? Is this coming from other traumatic experiences, and so on? So I'm interested in hearing and seeing that session, as well as discussing with you all next week. In the meantime, again, continue to stay connected with us. YouTube, Raising You Voices, all social media platforms, Raising You Voices. Again, we're appreciative of the Alliance for strong families and communities for this opportunity to participate in Accelerator. And again, we're looking forward to next week. Stay tuned. Thank you again to our youth here, Nezra Adams, Jaron Langford, and our youth and college ambassador, Deja Borns. Till next week, take care, guys.